Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. What a week it's been in the crypto space. I gotta say, we had a wild shakeout, then breakout, shakeout. Just been one of those weeks. And I'm gonna get into the charts. If you caught my last live stream, I was talking crypto, I was talking stocks and weed stocks and Forex and all this stuff. And, I jokingly told the folks in my Slack group, I said, a couple days ago, I said, exit all weed stocks, enter all crypto markets. And I said it jokingly, but man, that actually turned out to be a pretty good prediction there. It was just a joke, but wow, that's really the way things have worked out. Ripple has just been on an absolute tear, seen some signs of climactic action, some toppiness. So we'll take a look at that. We'll look at Bitcoin, where it could continue to go, some of the targets to keep an eye on here, and a few other names that are setting up. But first, let's take a quick look at the coin market cap for the week. The big leader, of course, no surprise, Ripple. At this point, it's still up 99%, doubled in the last 7 days. It was up much more earlier today. It was at one point up 65% just on the day, and has since pulled back quite a bit, but still a monster move for Ripple this week. You can see here Cardano, big winner in the last couple of days, up 28% in the week. Stellar moving in sympathy with Ripple, so Stellar had a big push as Ripple pulled back, so did Stellar. Tron up big, and Ethereum today getting a huge bid. We'll take a look at that chart, but the shorts got squeezed. Nice to see that. I think the BTC shorts are about to get squeezed as well, so we'll take a look at some of those charts here. But a lot of winners, a lot of green across the board. Finally nice to see. And it's been pretty much across the board, especially with the big cap names. There hasn't been just the random one or two names moving. Ripple was absolutely the first mover, definitely the one to bet on early on. Turned out to be a good trade, but then the rest of the market really started to get going, especially after BTC had that nice reversal yesterday. So let's look at that. Going to the total market cap here, you can see we're back above that $200 billion mark. We hit 225 here today as BTC dominance continues to drop off of the highs, largely due to Ripple this week. Also Ethereum, though, here, especially as of late today. And for a little while there, Ripple overtook Ethereum as the number 2 spot in the cryptocurrency market cap. But then we saw Ripple pull back. We saw Ethereum have a nice little pump, and Ethereum retook its place, edging out Ripple by about $2 billion on that coin market cap. But nonetheless, not too bad of a week for the big cap names. Now let's go take a look at BTC here. So looking at Bitcoin, it's important to remind everybody, and I say this a lot, I'm a broken record, I know, but it's important to remind everybody that we're still within this big pattern. And each wave is getting smaller. You see the big pullback, the rally, the pullback, the rally, the pullback, the rally, the pullback. And anyway, we're getting it really small, really tight, and that's good because this pattern will finally resolve itself here. And I believe going into Q4, we'll start to see this breakout one way or the other. Now, there's always that third option I've talked about where, hey, this just kind of meanders for going into next year, and it just creates this huge accumulation zone in and around that 6 to 7K. Hey, that'd be fine too, but right now, this is what I'm looking at. I'm watching this thing really narrow, and I think we'll see a break one way or the other here coming pretty soon here. When I say soon, I mean weeks to months. I'm not saying like this weekend, but definitely something to keep an eye on because this is real interesting to see. We've had these big waves, and each wave has had a relatively significant measured move. Well, sorry about my charts there. They've been respecting the Fibonacci retracement levels on these waves. And you guys know I'm a big fan of Fibonacci ratios. I use it as one of my tools to trading. But you can see here, looking at that first rally down, right? We had the big push in March down to April, and we had the lows there. And the rally ended right around that 618 key Fibonacci level. Here, this number was around 9,700 or so. We couldn't break that 10K. So you can see that's where the rally started to fizzle out. And then we had another big leg down. And if you look at the next big leg down we had that rally that went almost exactly to the key Fibonacci ratio there, around 8,300, 8,400. This also happened to coincide with that overhead resistance trend line that started to form, and that solidified that overhead trend line. And then we saw another big rollover. And then here again, in the recent past here in August. Now I'm using this big leg down as my impulse leg, but if we did that peak to peak, you're saying Fibonacci put it right around that 7,300, and that's where we saw prices roll over here most recently in early September. They couldn't get past that 7,400, 7,300. If you wanted to extend this exactly wick to wick, that would have put you right around 7,500, but this was really the zone to keep an eye on. And so it's important to see that those ratios have been a way to target the potential bounces. And so if we did that again with this most recent rally, you can see that we have a little bit of a rally going right now. That 618 takes you to right around just shy of 6,900. Now from a horizontal price perspective, I'm looking at 6,800 as the first big resistance point, which we're basically there. And I'm looking at that because of this support zone back here that formed in late August, and that tends to be your next resistance point. And you can see this most recent rally has taken us just shy of that $6,800 zone. So between 6,800 and 6,900, I know that's a wide zone, but you're talking $100, not that big. That's really what I'm looking at as the potential upside target on this rally. And then at that point, we'll see if the pattern continues, and then we get another leg down, albeit hopefully another smaller leg down as this big picture pattern on the daily and the weekly continues to coil up. And so that's what I'm looking at here. It's important to keep an eye on those two things. Another thing to note here is you did have a little bit of a double bottom form here over the last couple of days. I was making note of this and saying we need to confirm, and today we saw that confirmation with a break above the neckline right around that 65.50, which had been that major resistance zone that we saw things stalling out at. If you do a technical measured move on a pattern like this, I'm going to be conservative and use the candle bodies and not the wicks, but if you go body to body, the depth of that double bottom, and you extend that out from the breakout point, you can see where that takes us, right around 68.60, which is the same target zone that I'm looking at on this bounce. And so that's what I'm going to be looking at here. I will certainly tighten up the stops and get a little bit more cautious if it continues to rally as we approach that little bit of a zone as a potential profit-taking zone to keep an eye on here. Now, the other thing to note here is within this big pattern that we're seeing here, this big descending triangle pattern, which remember tends to break bearish, but we are seeing the support levels have a slight increase as this rally over the last couple of months takes place, right? So you're seeing a very slight drift higher, which is nice. So you're starting to see a little bit of a higher low pattern coming in, and then there's this intermediate tightening of the trends right around here below that. So that's going to be interesting to see how it reacts if it continues higher going into that 6,900 range, sub 7K for sure. So that's going to be what I'm watching right now. But big picture, still keeping an eye on this pattern here. I'm not taking any long-term positions in any of the alts right now, although I do like a lot of the valuations here. I think a lot of them are putting in good bottoming patterns and formations versus BTC. But until this resolves itself one way or the other, I'm going to maintain mostly just a trading stance right now. These are certainly great rallies to be trading, but I'm going to be booking profits and taking the gains when I can get them until we're kind of out of this and back into a trending market, because this is certainly not a broad trending market. We absolutely get these nice small rallies that last maybe a week or two, but that's really been all it's been for the last couple of months. Very choppy, very tough to trade at times. And so that's what I'm going to be taking my approach right now for now, but still looking pretty good. The thing that I really like here over the last week, I'm going to zoom in, kind of a very granular look. We have had several big shakeout attempts over the last week. We had this initial sell-off going into the week here on Monday. We had this nice consolidation, and you can see there was these big wicks that we saw last weekend, and there were just a lot of them. It was unusual to see so many of these shakeout attempts. They finally cracked it, but then we rallied hard, started to consolidate, and you can see this was the big one that I was watching here a couple of days ago. It looked like the market was about to roll over, went all the way back down to a key support level around that 6,100. But then immediately afterwards, you saw the bulls come in on massive volume, spiked it well above that resistance point and held. At that point, I reversed my tone, right? Everything was looking pretty bearish, and this is when I came on the live stream. And I said, you got to pay attention now, because the fact that we saw volume of that magnitude, it's important. It's significant. It means a lot. And the fact that we've seen multiple attempts at shakeouts, right? The bears have tried twice. We saw this shakeout attempt with a big reversal. Then it sat tight for about a day and a half. And then yesterday again, late in the afternoon, another big shakeout attempt, but then quickly reversed and took out that resistance. And so when you see that, it really starts to signify that the bears are starting to lose their steam. They're losing strength. And we've seen these shakeout attempts, these big sell-offs that are quickly bought up. And not only are they bought up, but they're also rallied into, and it's just starting to put a lot of pressure on the bears, on the sellers. And so that's significant. We're seeing a little bit of a change in a tone there. And after we saw that second attempt yesterday, that really kicked off the alts here over the last 24 hours. I mean, we've just seen across the board big spikes as BTC really started to get going. A lot of these alts had massive moves, outperforming, and that's been primarily my preference. Still preferring to trade the alts over BTC because you're seeing the outperformance there. You're seeing double-digit gains on some of those trades pretty quickly. So that's what you're looking at. But this is important to note that you get these sell-off attempts, and until that changes, you got to go with the trend. You got to give the benefit of the doubt to the trend. When things are moving this fast, I'm using the shorter-term time frames. I'm using the 1-hour charts to look for those little entries. You see the little bit of a bull flag setting up. You see the little shakeouts into that 1-hour 10 EMA. So until that changes, I'm going to stick with the shorter term time frames. If the 1-hour 10 EMA is lost and it starts to roll over, then I'm going to zoom out again and I'll be back to the 4-hour charts looking at retracement levels, looking at support levels on the bigger picture. And my preference is always to trade on a little bit of a bigger time frame like the 4-hour. But when the market dictates and things are moving quickly, you got to zoom in a little bit if you want to jump in on some of those uptrends. Let's take a look at the BTC shorts, because in spite of the little rally that we've seen here, shorts haven't come down a whole lot. They are drifting down a little bit here, especially today, but not dramatically, right? We're not seeing this kind of a pull-in shorts, so they're still relatively elevated. And so the pressure is on the shorts right now, and I'm thinking they're starting to get nervous. It'd be nice to see a little bit of a short squeeze and see this thing really spike down and BTC pop. Now, looking at Ethereum, we saw Ethereum have a very nice rally earlier today. Going to the 1-hour charts to kind of illustrate that, you can see it had already been strong. It broke out in sympathy with BTC overnight and just was marching along higher. And then here you saw this big spike that took it from 227 up to 243 relatively quickly. And during that, you saw the shorts on ETH really pulling hard. And you can see that. Let me zoom out. There's the daily chart. Short squeeze, getting smacked down right there. And that's what I want to see on the BTC shorts. I want to see this kind of bar on BTC shorts as that price rallies higher. So certainly putting the pressure on the Ethereum short sellers. And I mentioned here maybe a week and a half ago, I thought the Ethereum short trade was done. It had been an absolutely nice trade for most of August and early September, but I said, hey, the risk-reward ratio favors the bulls now, and sure enough, we saw that big spike lower followed by that big rally higher, and now we're seeing confirmation, right? You had that low, you had the rally, you had the pullback, the big smack, then we saw on BTC pulled ETH down, but it made a higher low, and now you're seeing confirmation of that today with the big rally we're seeing. So on the upside, looking at Ethereum, the level to be keeping an eye on is going to be major resistance going into that 260, maybe 270 range. And so that's the window to be keeping an eye on, because that's going to be the big floor, the big base that gave you that second leg down. So I'm thinking we're going to see another leg higher, but going into that window, I'm going to get a little bit cautious. Could it just pull a ripple and blast right through resistance and continue higher? Sure. I mean, especially if BTC continues to rally here and blast through. But right now, I'm taking this one day at a time. I'm booking the trades, the gains when I can get them on those trades. So if I'm trading this near term, I'm looking at that. Now, long term, if you're a position trader, if you're a holder, and you're looking at, hey, I got in on ETH at 170 or 180, and I think it's a good buy long term, then that's a whole nother strategy, a whole nother ball game. I'm just looking at a little bit more shorter term time frame, and because I'm a little bit more active in some of the trading. So that's something to keep an eye on here. Let's take a look at Ripple. Ripple's never going down ever again. So we're looking at Ripple. Just unbelievable, the move it had today. Just crazy volume. Just the move was just massive. And you're in a bull market or an alt market when You sell on a 20+% gain in a day and you're happy, and then only watch it go higher. So I jumped on Ripple for a quick trade. I had that initial move a couple days back, was up about 20% on the day, and then look at this little bit of a bull flag that it gave us on this 4-hour chart. Let that 10 EMA catch up. This was when I was doing my live stream. Some of you guys were asking about it. I said, hey, I think it looks good. I think it's ready to go. Still some more. And the big target that I was looking at was, first I thought 36 cents was my first target, and then going into that 42-cent mark. And that's what I did, is I scaled out into that. When it hit 42 cents, I started to take profits, and I thought, hey, that was a fabulous trade. Not even a day, you know, it was like a few hours, booked a 20+% trade. Why not? And sure enough, it pulled back a little bit, and then it just took off. And just never looked back, and gave you a couple of good secondary entries late. I wasn't watching it overnight, but if you were trading it, you know, during this time frame, this is another secondary entry on the 1-hour chart, kind of a little bit of a bull flag, and then gave you that one last leg higher, which was, to me, the big climactic top, the intermediate blow off. Doesn't mean it's going to come crashing all the way back down, but it's certainly showing signs of major selling distribution here at these levels. The big spike up to 80 cents, the massive volume that followed that. So now you're seeing a little bit of consolidation here. So that's what I'd be looking at. I'm zooming out now, looking at the 4-hour chart. First support's going to be around 49 cents. That's the first little bit last base that we saw here on that 4-hour chart. You could see support coming in there. And then if it really pulls in, the daily 10 EMA is still way down here around 36, but I expect that this will quickly come back here. So maybe that base that it broke out of around 42 is going to be the next level of support. So that's what I'm looking at for Ripple. A few other names before we wrap it up here. Going to VeChain here. It's still setting up here. Not all of them have broken out yet, but I'm keeping an eye on this one. It's looking pretty good here. Let me clear my my chart here, because I was sharing this with some other folks earlier today. But going to the 1-hour chart, you can see here, certainly you can argue that there's a little bit of a cup and handle type of action forming here with this most recent rounded base. You can see a lot of volume coming in as this accumulates, hit resistance, pulled right back, and now it's trying to break through. So got to keep an eye on this one here. Looking at Neo had a big pop earlier today, pulling back a little bit right now, so maybe putting in a little bit of a secondary entry point. This is the 1-hour chart again, but you can see how it's just stair-stepping its way up, tracking to that 10 EMA. Those so far have been good secondary entry points. These little shakeout attempts, these little pullbacks right to that shorter term moving average, and then they continue to rally higher. EOS was doing something similar earlier today, just moving very nicely, stair-stepping its way up, broke out, pulled back, looked like it was about to roll over here, had that big wick, found a lot of buying support, still moving higher, living above that 10 EMA. So for now, these shorter term time frames, that's what I'm watching. Just kind of keep an eye on these, looking at that intermediate short term momentum. If it starts to break and fail at that point, it looks like consolidation, profit taking is happening, then I'll zoom out and I'll start looking at the 4-hour charts as more of a guide for me. Would not surprise me if we saw a little bit of consolidation going into the weekend. Things do tend to slow down a little bit, so maybe we will see some profit taking as the daily close comes to an end here. But for now, got to keep an eye on a lot of these names. Some of the alts are still moving, especially the mid cap, small cap. You're seeing a rotation into some of those. So looking at Stratus, that one was getting a bit earlier. Looks like it's trying to break out here the last couple of days, or last couple candles have been looking pretty good here. I'm watching WanChain also setting up, breaking out now right above resistance, and so that one's looking pretty good here. 0x, I know that was on a newsletter pump, but still moving very nicely. You can see that rallied right to resistance, pulling right back right now, so we'll see if this is a secondary entry point, but 0x is moving. And finally, Dash. So Dash was looking pretty interesting yesterday. I was watching this little consolidation that it was putting in, and right around that $200 zone was putting in a little bit of a base there, and you can see it broke out. And right now it's just pausing, a little bit of a throwback, letting that moving average catch up, but it looks like it wants to keep going. So I'd keep an eye on Dash. Next level up is going to be looking at these prior highs to see if it can test that. That's again around that 220 to 222 zone on Dash. So we can see if get above that, you might start to see some pretty quick movement on Dash. And then I'm looking at the mid 200 range above that zone. So a lot of stuff happening. Don't get complacent. These are nice moves, very exciting, but remember the big picture. I'm not trying to splash water on the party here per se, but I just want to remind you guys, I've been saying this a lot lately, but until we resolve out of this broader pattern, I will continue to take a cautious approach. I think we're going to see this resolve going into Q4. I'm excited for Q4. I think it'll be good, but you know, it could go either way. Let's be honest. And until this is done, you know, these trades, these alt trades are very nice counter trend rallies. We've been in a big decline for a couple of weeks, couple of months in some cases, and they were due. They were due for a bounce. You're seeing some very large percentage gains because of the valuations. I mean, some of the valuations just got so low. You look at something like Ripple, went down to 25 cents, and so for it to get to 50 cents from a dollar perspective is not a huge move compared to where it had been, but is an absolutely big move from a percentage basis, right? It's a near double in a couple of days. So you will see big percentages. It's easy to get excited about, whoa, you know, we're up, you know, 30% and 20%, and that is exciting, and it's good to finally see it. But it's always good to kind of keep everything in perspective, right? You look at something like NEO, you know, it's at $20, and it's already had a pretty big move off of the low, but it's still only $20 NEO, right? We were at $40 NEO in July, and so NEO could double from here. You can have 100% gain and still just be back to where we were in July. And so something to keep in mind. I'm not saying you know, that they're not going to go back up or that they can't go lower, but just you know, we look at the number percentages, and it's very easy to get excited if you're trading. Then absolutely it matters, absolutely. But just keep in mind that these moves off the lows, usually the first couple of moves off the low are the big percent moves because of that reason. But now we want to see some more continuation, some more follow through to the upside. So all in all, good stuff. Like this double bottom putting in here on the daily chart, but we're starting to get pretty close to that first target that I'm looking at. So that's what I'm going to be watching going into the weekend. And I'll be playing it relatively tight and kind of booking the gains quickly as they come. So thanks for being here, guys. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend, rest of your week, wherever you may be. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button. Until next time, take care, everyone.